Hey everyone, Catch 'em All Collectibles here. In today's video, I'm going to discuss approximately 10 cards that I think the all-time high is in. That is not to say that the cards are at all-time highs today, but that is to say that in real inflation-adjusted terms, I think that they have peaked. Their best days are behind them, essentially. So I'm going to go through a lot of Pokemon price and Pokedata info. Some of these are real easy ones, kind of low hanging fruit. I will get into some, I think, kind of spicy ones. So be sure to stay tuned for the entire thing. I will have timestamps down below for each individual card. And I'll kind of talk you through why I think this to be the case. This is not financial investing type advice. This is just me making commentary, me hopping off of the fence that I usually sit on and making some bold statements to end the year. This should be my last video, maybe second to last video of 2022. So yeah, Eevee, first edition, PSA 10 and PSA 9, maybe every single grade. You can see right now, as of today, 1,370 graded in PSA 10. And if you go back into 2020, there was about 2 to 300, maybe 400 by the end of 2020. And what you'll see is the peak prices. Pokemon price is not perfect, nor is Pokedata. But some of these real flyers, I don't believe were real transactions. $3,000, $2,000. But I sold some myself. Here's a $1,300 data point. Here's a $1,200 data point. I sold some myself at and slightly above $1,000. So yeah, that was back when the pop was around 300. The pop today is 1,300. The pop of the PSA 9s are 2,500. And a card like this is, I mean, before my time with my own YouTube channel, I went on Jake's channel from Pokenomics. I went on John's channel, Pokemon Radar, and we talked about this card. It wasn't sustainable. This was the epitome. This just really was representative of the bubble we were in the mania. Cards like this were printed so heavily, millions of copies. Only a slight fraction of them have been graded. Even still, even after the pops have run up, I see no reasonable way that this card can ever achieve in real terms. And when I say real inflation adjusted terms, the card peaked at, let's say, $1,000 in 2020, approximately 3.5% per year historical inflation rates. Prices double, or the dollar's value halves every 20 years, essentially, with 3.5% inflation. So if that card were to hit $2,000 in 2040, that would be essentially a break even. That would be tying its all-time high. So that's not to say in 300 years of inflation, if Pokemon's still a thing, this could be going for $1,000 when a gallon of milk is $1,000 or something like that. But yeah, just to clarify what I mean in real inflation adjusted terms. So the next several cards are going to be very similar. I mean, I'm going to lump the Pikachu in. I think the same fundamentals, the same exact pop chart. Looking a little bit closer to like recent sales, PSA 9s of the Pikachu, $34. PSA 9s of the Eevee, $15. One of the things that will happen, PSA grading is $15 right now, and it turns around in 2 or 3 months. You can still grade as of today. A PSA 10, PSA 10 sell for, this isn't the newest data, PSA 10 sell for about $80. That's profitable with $15, but there is punishment. If you don't hit the 10, you're going to be selling a 9 for about $15, which after you ship it, after you pay your fees, you need to have a high 10 rate if you're going to grade it. And cards like this, cards that are produced so heavily, such a high print run, and so widely available in raw mint condition, I think they'll meet kind of an equilibrium price. PSA 9 will be slight loss, maybe break even, and PSA 10 will be a little bit of profit. That's where they existed. I mean, I've been grading these two cards personally since 2016, 2015, and it was always that case. And I think part of the reason that we'll never revisit the highs because people were just such a mania, such a bubble. Not that we won't go into such a bubble, but next time if we do, there's not just 200 owners out there, there's 2,000 owners out there. We've more than 10x the pop of these cards. And they'll all be ready to sell, as well as all the new people grading the mint copies that are surely still available. Continuing on the same trend, Charmander. I did a presentation with the Pokenomics Patreon before where I talked about print runs. Base set print run was massive. Not only that, this was a playset in the theme deck. This was a playset in the 2-player starter set. This is probably the single most printed card of all time with over 10 million copies. 2 million base set 2-player starter sets were printed by one source that I was able to find. And this card, again, peaked around $600, if not slightly higher. And in that time that was $600. The population was about 400 in PSA 10, and now it's 2,700. I mean, you're talking about a 5x. It's not surprising what the prices have done. These are kind of, again, as I mentioned, these are low-hanging fruit. WOTC first edition commons and uncommons are really standout, easy things to pick on. I was selling PSA 10, Golbats, Sea Kings, things like that from Fossil and Jungle for a couple $100, $100 to $200. And I think we'll never revisit those highs. Main thing being, I mean, the only reason this was able to happen is because PSA was closed. We were in the midst of a pandemic. There was a huge spike in demand, which we may or may not ever meet again. The rate of spike coupled with the backlog of PSA coupled with PSA being closed. I mean, that didn't happen until 2021. But if you sent cards in late 2020, it took a long time to come back. There was a big lag, and there were only 100 or less copies of a card like this on the market for people to fight over. Yeah, 120 copies. So again, Psyduck, I'm picking on Psyduck from Neo Destiny. Interesting thing with Neo Destiny, some of the later, part of the reason I wanted to show this, a lot lower pops, but still, I would not personally touch them from any kind of an investing perspective. I think the all-time high is in $228. It appears that there was a sale in, this is showing late 2021, but to me, it just feels like these cards are still mass produced, even though Neo and e-reader era and a lot of the mid-era stuff, a lot of that stuff is significantly less produced than base Jungle Fossil Rocket, the first WotC sets, and current modern day sets as well. But it's still a set card in English that was mass produced, distributed across the country, if not the world. There's a lot of them out there. This pop is only 71 today, and actually that's an important point too. Golbat's pop is only 327. They could very well be thousands, just as these are. The only reason they weren't is because they were less popular species. As many Golbats exist, probably, well, Golbat's an uncommon, Pikachu and Eevee are commons. That's what made them so much worse. But millions of copies of each of these cards exist. Psyduck, at least hundreds of thousands. These pops are nowhere near any reasonable percentage, any noticeable percentage of the total amount produced. Now we're going to get into Ultra Modern. Very low-hanging fruit still, but I promise we'll get to a fairly spicy one soon. Sword Shield 50. I've got the I thought I had the image here, but I don't have the image here. Pokemon Price is failing me and getting me the image here. PSA 10 pop of 37,000. This card out of the gate was selling for hundreds of dollars, $300 to $400 in PSA 10. I think initial preliminary data showed that this might be hard to grade, and we had no idea at the time that the pop was going to be 60,000, 65,000 total graded. Now in hindsight, and data that we've seen in the prior couple of years with ultra modern sets, this seems to be the norm. This will be the norm going forward. Maybe not quite 40,000, 60,000. This one might stand out for quite a while and take the crown as the most graded card of all time for Pokemon. But yeah, it's just, there's so many of them out there. The PSA 10 actually grades easier. I mean, the mode for grades is PSA 10, the most common graded specimen. And there's got to be so many Champions Path ETBs out there still, and so many sealed copies. It's just wild what the mania that was going on. $300 to $400 out of the gate. If and when the price starts climbing again, I mean, the price as of today, $30 to $40 in PSA 10, $10 to $20 in PSA 9. If the price were to start ticking up, if it were to go into $100, $200 territory, people are just going to grade a lot more. There's still a lot more of them out there. So cards like this, the first several, I feel very, very confident that the all-time high is in. Here's one that gets a little bit more spicy potentially. Maybe not for most people. Probably not. Probably shouldn't feel too spicy, but PSA 10 Evolutions Charizard. I mean, this card has come down. It peaked in PSA 9 about $700. I think it was actually closer to $1,000. One thing Pokemon Price and Pokedata can do is they can miss some data points. They can have some erroneous data points. But looking at the normal trends, PSA 10, $6,000. As of today, it's fallen 66% to $1,900. 683 down to about $100 for the PSA 9. So about an 80% drop on the PSA 9. To me, again, just mass printed set. Evolutions is out there so heavily. I mean, there's a box right behind me. There's so much of it though. And the turnaround times, $15 PSA, turning around in under 3 months. And that's only going to go down. I think both turnaround times and price are going to go down, which are going to be a further just drag on the prices of these cards in the future. Because, yeah, you've only got about 25,000 graded. There are hundreds of thousands printed. English mass-produced set card. Here's the one that is the original. I guess base set unlimited is still a reprint of Japanese, reprint of first edition, reprint of Shadowless. So it's not the first, but still base set unlimited. The OG to a lot of us on the playgrounds. This card did insane things in 2020. I had several copies I sold. Pokedata showing a peak of around 4,400. I know that I sold a couple copies between $5,000 and $6,000. As of today, floating between $900 and $1,000. PSA 10 peaked around 30,000 and is currently standing at, this is saying 11,700. I did see some sell for, this did capture $8,500, $9,000. It did dip below 10,000 for a little bit, and it seems to be holding. Let me know in the comments below as I go through these if you disagree with me. These are just my opinions. I think that these cards will never achieve higher prices than they have. So I believe the PSA 10 and the PSA 9 will never go over $30,000 and $6,000 respectively in the future in inflation adjusted terms. Again, if in 2040 this card is $12,000 or $6,000, or yeah, sorry, $12,000 again, that's the same. That would be reachieving its high. In nominal terms, obviously inflation, the dollar becomes less and less valuable over time. So these things could in 10 years go over their price from the 2020 bubble, but that wouldn't be like in real terms the same thing. Continuing on, this is where we get a little bit more. This card came to mind, honestly, not knowing what the price history was. This one is one I feel less strongly about, but I still do believe that the all-time high may be in. The all-time high peaked around 4,200 in 2020. And just to give you like a little taste of what inflation does, I mean, since 2020, anyone paying attention to the broader economy, broader news, we've experienced a fair bit of inflation. So over the past year or so, it's been 7 to 10%. And 2020 was only 2 years ago. But if you adjust that for inflation, that $4,200 high is closer to $5,000 now with a couple years of 5 to 10% inflation. That adds up quickly. So not only is it not $5,000 today to match the high, but the most recent sale was $2,850. Again, you see what the pops were doing. It went from around 660 up to 780. Not nearly as significant as a lot of the WOTC first edition holos. That's why I think this card, I mean, this card is very hard to pull. The sealed product is a lot more expensive. And there's just a lot less of them out there. The print qualities were tougher. You can see the PSA 10 and PSA 8 are about similar difficulty to achieve, with PSA 9 being the median. So most copies are going to land PSA 9, but I still feel fairly confident. $5,000. The PSA 9, we don't have the greatest data. Maybe I'm calling out the PSA 10 here more specifically. PSA 9, I can't really see enough data to call, but it's hard to say with that. Moonbreon, we made it. We made it to Moonbreon, 13 minutes in. I believe this card, honestly, and I believe a trend for all ultra-modern cards, not all, many ultra-modern cards coming out will achieve their all-time high in real terms within the first 2 years of release. That is my true belief. I believe that usually it's the very first cards going to market. Moonbreon did a crazy thing where it came out fairly high. We were doing 1,000 out of the gate, people doing their thing, first to market, paying way too much in my opinion, raced to the bottom. Although it never really raced to the bottom. I mean, it went down around $500-600 and it's had a couple ups and downs. Whatever, I don't know what happened here. Something happened. This is only capturing a high of $1,200. I don't have it on the next tab, but this is only capturing a high of $1,200. Anyone who's paid attention the past couple of months, it peaked closer to $1,500 to $1,600, and I think that might be the all-time high. This one is dangerous. This one could prove me wrong soonest. The funny thing about making this video, I cannot be proven right ever. 100 years from now, someone could say, oh, give it another decade. We're going to have Gen 59 is going to bring in a new swath of people that's going to make it go to the moon. I can never be proven right. I can only be proven wrong. So I'm sticking my neck out there with this video. It's fun though. It's fun to make some calls. It's fun to reflect on this in a year, reflect on this in 5 years and see if I was right, see what these have done. But I truly think that this card at $1,500-$1,600 a month or so ago was an all-time high. I think the pop is only going to continue to run. I know the pops only go up, right? So the pop's only going to continue to go up. We've got a PSA 10 rate of over 80%, very, very high PSA 10 rate. Evolving Skies, in my opinion, I think it's going to get reprinted again and again. It's only a year old. I think we have multiple reprints to come. We haven't had many reprints. We haven't had many new products coming out. We have Crown Zenith coming out soon. But I feel like in the background right now, Pokemon might be cranking out the printers. They might be cranking out Evolving Skies. They might be cranking out a little bit more Crown Zenith, a little bit of Brilliant Stars, sets like that, before we get into Scarlet and Violet release in March of 2023, where the MSRP will go up. So I believe between now and then, they're really going to go back and they're going to do like at least one last big push out of product to cover these sets that have kind of moved up a bit, are still standard legal and needed for people for their decks. So yeah, Moonbreon, sorry, I believe you've peaked. I believe it's again, not to say that today's price is going to be, it's only down from here. I just think we won't go above the all-time high of $1,500 to $1,600. That might be the first one to prove me wrong too. It'll be interesting to see. Sceptile. I didn't want to just do, I did some very vintage and I did some ultra modern. I wanted to give a little love to in between. The crazy thing about these in between sets, the pops are so low. The pops are so low and there's so little data to go off of. This one did have better, looks like I closed the tab, but it did have better data on Pokemon Pokedata. But this one, I like to show the pops. So Pokedata doesn't show the historical pops as Pokemon Price does. I kind of use both tools together. But PSA 10s were at 4 in August of 2020 when the boom happened, when the bubble happened. And it's gone up to 24, 6x. It's still very low. Obviously, 24 is a very low number. This card was printed at least tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands times. Where are they though? It's hard to say where they are. Are they going to come out of the woodwork? It's 6x, but it's still very, very low for an English set card. And a lot of sets from Old School EX, including the holos, all the way through like Black and White XY. I mean the holos being obviously not the premier chase card. You had the gold stars, you had the level X's, the legends, cards like that above it. But I think a lot of these cards peaked as well. It's very hard to say the data sparse. I know I privately transacted some of these. So when you do a private transaction, it doesn't show up on Pokedata or Pokemon Price. But I did some of these privately, not this card specifically. But I'm fairly confident in making a claim that a lot of these will have peaked all-time highs in real terms. A lot of these mid-era niche cards. Great Encounters, I think the pop is popping up more than a lot of the other sets. I think the print quality was a little bit higher for this one, so the PSA 10 rate is higher. You can see almost as many 10s as 9s, and some of the sets wouldn't be quite as high. Some of these sets, mid-eras, are still single digit, less than 5 PSA 10s for an English set card. So again, this could be one that proves me wrong sooner rather than later. I'm not as confident on this one as I am in the early WOTC stuff, the low-hanging fruit I showed at the start, the Sword Shield 50. But again, I feel fairly confident that a lot of these cards would have peaked. Another one, I didn't want to just pick on graded cards. I think graded cards are the worst offender, but sealed product I think is not immune. These are Jungle First Edition booster boxes. As of today, they're going for about $10,000 to $12,000. Again, they peaked around 30 in 2020. It's been 2 years, 2 years of fairly high inflation. To match this in real terms, you would have to be about $35,000 today. Not only are they not $35,000 today, they're closer to $10,000 to $12,000. And there's a lot of them out there. Box breaks are still going on. They're still widely available. They're on PWCC, Heritage, Golden, eBay almost every week. Someday that'll probably run out. But I truly think, again, I don't feel as confident about this one as I do about the WOTC cards, the non-holos. But I feel fairly confident here. And I just wanted to throw in one final one. I don't think the trophy card market is immune. This one, I feel a little torn on. I don't think Logan will sell his anytime soon. So I think he's just going to sit on that. If it stays Pop 1 forever and Logan never sells, I can't be proven wrong because there would just be no transaction to prove me wrong, right? Like theoretically, people could value it at $10 million, whatever they want to, but it's all arbitrary until it's actually sold. I'm fairly confident too. Like one, I think Logan's going to hold it for long term. Two, if another one's graded and someone else sells it, that makes it pop too. It makes it less elusive, less exclusive. And I think the price would be lower than $5.275 million, especially in inflation adjusted terms. You're talking nearly $6 million it would have to hit today. And I think if Logan decided to auction that card, I do not think it does $6 million today. I think if he tried to sell it privately, I don't think there's a buyer at $6 million. So I did want to close out. I got a little bit of vintage, modern, little bit of mid-era, little bit of trophy, little bit, I mean, literally the highest end, the most expensive singular sale of any Pokemon item in the history. I think that was, in inflation adjusted terms, the highest that card will ever do, in my opinion. Especially extra copies coming out. There's 39 theoretically that were produced and awarded. There's like 34 graded already. Clearly, I mean, there's extra copies out there. There's been more than 39 made. But yeah, that's my video for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hopped off my fence. I made some bold claims. As you can see behind me, my background's been updated a little bit. I've got an extra shelf. I will bring the canvases back at some point. I think I'm going to do 2 canvases on this side, and then I might do something else back here. I got to figure it out. I just don't want to be putting holes in my wall willy-nilly. But yeah, I appreciate everyone watching today. We've got only a little bit longer to go until the new year. But I hope everyone has, this will be the last video you see me, pre-recorded video before Christmas. Hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. I appreciate you all watching, and I will catch you all later.